If you pay much attention to extraction shooters or FPS games in general, you may remember a bubble of hype around a game called Gray Zone Warfare. Now, on the surface, it actually seems really cool. It looks good, it has a compelling concept, and the idea of playing as a private military contractor just seems fun. However, it does seem like this game has received quite a bit of criticism. Today I want to dive into the game and find out if this is unfounded, and then maybe share my thoughts on the game. So there are two main complaints you'll see when you're looking at reviews for this game. First, the enemy AI can one-shot you crouched in the grass from 5 miles away. Now this is barely exaggerated. It's a problem. The second is the optimization or lack thereof. But that first one is probably the bigger issue. In this game you have to helicopter places, which means you're looking at 2 to 3 minutes to fly to a drop-off point. Then another 2 to 3 minutes to travel where you're going. Then you kind of have to avoid getting shot on the way. If you get hit in the arms or legs, you can patch it up with a bandage and keep moving, but if you get hit in the head or a major organ or your neck or something like that, you die pretty much immediately. That means you lose all your stuff and you have to buy some basic equipment to go spend another 5 minutes traveling back to where you died, with a smaller loadout than last time since you're trying to recover everything you lost. If you die, your old body disappears, which means you only get one shot at regaining all the loot you had. This kind of creates this sense of gear fear, which is fun, but it means you spend quite a bit of time focusing on things other than the objective you're trying to accomplish. The main gameplay loop is kind of fun though. You go and complete missions, you extract from those missions and collect a cash reward to level up reputation with vendors in order to unlock new weapons and quests. However, a fun gameplay loop is one in which you are fighting for your life, and the enemies in this game are so powerful that sometimes you don't end up doing much fighting. They have exactly the same stats as you, give or take some protective armor, which in theory is a cool idea, but in practice means that every single random encounter with a couple low-level enemies is a 1v3 gunfight in which one shot could theoretically kill you. And additionally, you get set back 5 minutes every time you die. Imagine Counter-Strike, but you're a lone terrorist trying to plant the bomb while 6 enemy counter-terrorist bots randomly patrol the map. Sure, you could have fun if you're pretty good, but you're going to end up dying quite a bit. Unfortunately, in the early game, the money you get from completing an objective really only covers you dying once or twice, so the 10 grand you initially get doesn't last terribly long. All of this means that the game is fun, but the gameplay loop itself is kind of inherently flawed due to the realistic nature of how the developers are looking at it. The second thing is optimization. Without frame generation, people are getting 80 to 90 FPS on maximum settings on some pretty high-end machines, which seems a bit lower than it should be. However, I would like to point this is kind of on par for modern games. If you throw in all this great looking grass and lighting and this really good long view distance, it's going to be hard to run. I mean, maybe there are some workarounds they can implement, but there will be cases where they really just can't make the game run too much better. This is where it's kind of important to realize that you can just lower your settings. Optimization is a legitimate thing that the developers should try and work on, but there is a certain point where you have to acknowledge that the game is very graphically intensive and will just run a little less smoothly simply because hardware is not quite caught up to how demanding modern games can be. The easiest solution here is to lower your graphics settings. I mean, you can get a great experience on medium. Just set the preset to that, then increase the quality on a few things, and it'll look really good. Maybe not quite as good as you see in the trailers, but it'll have a good balance of looking good and running well. I hate to make it sound like people are exaggerating, but people do tend to forget that 60 FPS is playable, and lower graphics settings than Ultra do exist. In essence, the game probably could be optimized to run a little better, but that's far from the most important concern. So, those are really the two main things that account for the majority of this game's negative reviews. Sure, there might be some people out there that don't really care for the concept, but I kind of like it. So what are my thoughts? For me, I haven't had any hardware issues. I'm fine with turning on FSR to get better frame rates, so performance has never really bothered me. That other thing about the gameplay loop is pretty annoying though. Every time you die, it completely takes you out of the action, meaning that even the small missions with tiny rewards can take you a few tries. This is probably why the game takes so long to beat. The fact that the missions, which should in theory be pretty short, take 20 to 30 minutes each when they should be pretty straightforward. It's fun, but it's quite a bit of work. I mean, that makes it very rewarding when you do finally complete a mission, but getting there in and of itself is an entirely different kind of pain. I think the game takes a few hours to get used to. At first, every time you helicopter in, you're going to get clapped by the AI. Certain missions are going to take forever, but if you stick with it, you'll get better and start to figure it out. For me, I was struggling winning firefights until I figured out the button to switch from single fire to automatic mode. That's B. That means you can pick off easy targets from a distance and then switch to automatic when things start getting intense. Stuff like that is always happening to me, and every time I play, it gets a little bit easier. It's still a difficult game, and it's not for today's hyper-casual Fortnite generation by any means. But I think it's good if you set your expectations right. Rest assured, the developers do want to make something good. You can look at changelogs and the live streams and stuff they're putting out. It's clear they play the game, and when something like getting sniped from across the map and headshotted by a starter town AI happens to them, they don't enjoy it. They claim it might be several years away from completing the game, but if this is the case, hopefully they can take some player feedback into account to make the game a little bit more enjoyable. Stuff like the Night Ops update is already on the way, and they're cooking up some interesting stuff for it. It seems like no matter what, they're devoted to making the experience of Gray Zone Warfare stand out and be an overall very playable experience. Hopefully they'll make these AI a little less aimbot, which could certainly help the state of things. Gray Zone Warfare is a constantly evolving project, one that needs a lot of work, but could one day become something very special. So, what do you think? Do you agree with me? Disagree? I'm always open to constructive criticism, so let me know what your thoughts are down below. Alright, that's all for today. I'll see you later.